How do we reclaim our creative identity? You may not realize that you have one, but you do. And that's the topic that we're going to address today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager, and today I have a beautiful and talented guest with me. Her name is Lara Bianca Pilcher, and she is a very talented performing artist as an actress. She is an author and a certified creativity coach who spent more than 25 years helping dancers, actors, singers, writers, musicians, and visual artists reclaim this creative identity. And her book, Audacious Artistry, will help us get anchored in that. I'm so excited to have her here today. Welcome, Lara. I'm so glad you're on Flourish-Meant.
Thank you, Tina. I love the name of this podcast, so I'm all in. Let's dive in.
All right, Lara, let's talk about why you felt that this is a topic for everyone, even though they may not realize that they have a creative identity.
Yeah, because our design, our God-given design is to be creative. And it's like Psychology 101. You know, when you were a child that we expressed ourselves through dancing and singing. In fact, what a picture of a happy home when there's painting and drawing and dance. It's the first language that we have. And so some of us think, oh, I'm not creative, but it's not true because the human design, the human brain is creative. And if you're not identifying as an artist, which of course we're more familiar with our creativity. But of course there's many others who aren't in artistic careers, but they're creative too. And creativity exists in you whether you realize it or not. People that are maybe in admin, they are problem solving, and that is the creative center of the brain. So without going into a whole thesis on that, it's so important that we recognize everyone is creative, whether they identify as an artist or not. And creativity is a life force that without it, it just sits in us and stagnates, and it's not healthy. We need to express ourselves creatively.
That is so beautifully said and so true. I've read some research that says that creativity is not a luxury, it is a survival skill. It is that problem solving part of who we are. And that can apply to craftsmanship, to cooking, to gardening, to administration, as you said, even in business and marketing. There's lots of ways that we're creative. So let's talk about what are some of the things that get in the way of us identifying as creative and embracing that part of who we are.
Particularly in the US. Now, if you're wondering what accent this is, I'm Australian, but I've spent a lot of my career in London. And this applies in a lot of places. But I've noticed since living here even more so, you may have heard of hustle culture. It's not the nicest word, but we're aware of it. But what it is that we get on the accomplishments and acquisitions track, and we start to chase those things, and creativity becomes, it's a lie, but it becomes a luxury. It becomes something who has time for creativity. It becomes something that's an optional extra. And so the fun cooking class goes, the painting class, or the story writing, or whatever it is, those things start to go. But there's a piece of people listening, if this is you, who go, man, I used to love dancing, or you might dance around the kitchen or whatever it is. But that creative expression actually helps you regulate your nervous system for the rest of your life. And we're looking at creativity as a 360-degree view. It's a piece of a healthy life. So as soon as we think it's something I don't have time for, it's a luxury, it's actually a lie because we're in a hustle culture. And we need to just recalibrate and come back to our God-given DNA design, which is beautiful and life-giving and a life force, as you said. So I'm a big fan, and I know the listeners are as well. But for those who think they're not, it's there. It's within you. It's just something we need to lean into and recognize as important and valuable.
Interesting that you use the word rest, which has two meanings there. Rest meaning all the other areas of your life, but also rest meaning that inner peace, not just physical rest, but that mental, spiritual, social peace that we desperately need for our well-being. And we're missing out on that because of our hustle culture. Can you talk about that essential piece of creativity and artistic exploration in some respects to help us be healthy in all the levels of who we are?
Yeah, it's funny because I read a story, and it was so beautiful. It was about a young creative family, and they were living in the suburbs, and the mother had been making her own curtains and creating art for the walls and doing all the beautiful things. And the house had feeling, it had beauty, it had her own unique artistic expression. But then they went on the acquisitions track. They upscaled, they bought a bigger house, they moved to a more affluent neighborhood. And when they got there, they looked right and left and they recognized that people were doing monochrome or black, white, gray in their house. It was ultra modern. It was during this period of ultra modern, which has changed a little, but you might remember the black, white, and gray period. And everything was in those tones. And she's like, oh, all of a sudden, my creativity doesn't fit in and my expression doesn't matter anymore. And I need to look like the Joneses, hence the keeping up with the Joneses. And she dulled herself. She muted herself. Her curtains became bland. Her own unique creative voice disappeared. And with that, a lot of her joy. And the root of that is comparison or comparisonitis, compare and despair. And that is the biggest thief of our creativity. When we start to mute ourselves in order to fit in, we don't recognize that it's comparison. And it's devastating because the only unique contribution we get to bring to this world is born of our creativity. And it's the thing we get to leave behind when we go. And so the beauty of her home, somewhat, maybe it was fashionable, but the beauty and the joy and the life force began to fizzle out. And her children remember that and share that publicly. So,
Well, I'm very much a fan of debunking the myths of comparison, and competition is also related to that. That's part of the comparison trap and the disease of comparison that pulls us away from who God intended for us to be. How do we get stuck in that? And then how do we get out?
it actually comes back to part of our human design, but we get a little bit off track because we're born with, and this is why so much of my work is in identity, because we go, you need to know your identity. But how do you do that? And so for me, identity 101 is you're born, you're a baby, and you get that from your mother's face or your father's face, but particularly the mother. You're having eye contact. And if your mother isn't giving you that eye contact, it's distressing for a baby. They've done tests on this. This is really researched and heavily looked at as part of identity. So the mother is saying, hey, you exist, you matter, I see you. And then we go through life, and those questions are part of our human uniqueness. I exist, I matter, I see you. And so for me, it's like that is why it's so important because we give and receive identity from each other. I'm seeing you, Tina, today, and I'm saying you exist, you matter by showing up. I see you, your work matters. But so often, what happens is we start to get off track with that human design and we start to look for that identity by performance. And, like you said, competition. And I need to fit in and I need to be this and I need to be that. But the identity question of our human design is, do I belong to a community and what is my contribution to that community? And the arts and filmmaking and media, it's so topsy-turvy, isn't it? Because it's so it ebbs and flows in opportunity. And so our identity is getting rocked around with that all the time, which is really hard. But when you recognize, oh, underneath this, it's a human design thing, it's a God-given design thing, that my identity is from each other. So you want to look at other people and say, you matter to me. I see you. Do I have value to you? Do you have value to me? That's actually healthiness. But when we're constantly seeking through competition for these people that are out there, outside of our actual community to give us validation, that is a spiral into a downward depression and actually pull away from our identity and our God-given identity, our psychological identity. And so competition, you've just got to watch. It's not that anybody's immune, but recalibrate and get back onto who am I and who are the people around me that are giving me a healthy identity that I matter to, that see me. That's so important because the arts and filmmaking and all of that is never going to be able to stabilize your identity.
We have an innate need to be seen, heard, and loved. And I'm hearing that in what you're saying as well. But we're meant to be seen, heard, and loved ultimately approved of, accepted by, acknowledged by God, who is perfect in the way he sees, hears, and loves us. Whereas people can sometimes do that imperfectly. And God sees us as human beings, whereas we see each other sometimes as human doings. It's about what we do instead of who we are. So how do we rectify that situation?
Yeah, I think it's so natural, first of all, and I think we need to be careful because we so naturally get off track here. But I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to look out and go, wow, we're really off track with giving each other that seen, heard, known, loved identity. But I'll tell you a story that probably illustrates how I personally do this because I'll be going to, for example, where I met you, a network gathering. And as we go there, so often, if we're really honest, we're going there with, will anybody see me? Will I matter to anybody? Will I have value to anybody? And you see that in the room. You see it as people are talking to you, but looking for someone more important to talk to. Ouch. You see that in ourselves, in the anxiety that we walk into the room with. Or maybe we're already up there on the pedestal, on the panel, or whatever, and we go, I'm obviously valuable. I'm here. And we are in a place of needing to treat people very carefully when we have those platforms. But ultimately, what I do on the way to these sorts of gatherings and every job or every audition or every casting is I sit in the presence of God and I recalibrate my soul because I constantly get off track. That is the human condition, and it's totally normal. I constantly get off track. And I'm like, Father, on the way here, my identity is in you. You see me first. You love me first. Help me see other people. Help me love them. Help me give them identity and not be about me. And it takes me sometimes the good drive there, 30 to 40 minutes sometimes to worship and to actually get out of that soul destroying anxiety of trying to get that identity in an unhealthy way. Now, for me, as someone who works in this space, to be going through that, that should say to many people that maybe have no awareness of how difficult it can be to recalibrate. It's not a simple, oh, I just need to know who I am. It's a process. It's a recalibration. It's a work. It's a practice. It's a realignment. And it's so beautiful because whenever I've recalibrated and gone into a space, I've had a much better night and a much better experience meeting people and so much more joy and trusting God to help me while still doing the work of showing up to meet the people that he wants me to meet. And that's been so freeing for me. So it's a weird way of answering it, but it's more of a testimony that that's what I personally need to do and as an ongoing practice.
Laura, I know that you have step-by-step pieces that will help other people move into this process and begin to calibrate the way you're talking about this in your book, Audacious Artistry, in the way that you provide coaching. How can people stay connected with you and get a copy of this book?
Yeah, for those on video, I'm holding it up because it's just my author copy, and I love it. It's just come out in the world. It's Audacious Artistry: Reclaim Your Creative Identity and Thrive in a Saturated World. It's everywhere, all the major bookstores. It's traditionally published, so you will find it everywhere, and in physical form in some stores as well. But you can go to my website, laurabiancapilcher.com/book, and I've put a lot of links there for the US, for Australia, for the UK. And you can find your favorite bookstore, of course, and get it there.
I hope that all of you listening were encouraged to reclaim your creative identity. And of course, I also hope that you will come back for the next episode of Flourishment.